slightly further top.
Yeah. So even if I give Quraysh the benefit of doubt, they still left with some victory. You understand?
But they wanted their land back, right?
Hmm?
They wanted their land back.
But not Quraysh. Who wanted the land back?
The-
Who were expelled prior? What was the first tribe that was expelled? I'm just jogging your memory so that you are all full and attentive. Okay. Banu Qaynuqa were expelled because of a mischief that they played on an Ansari woman, and eventually that ended up killing one of the persons, right? The Muslim or one of the Ansar, and so on. So they were expelled. They were the largest group. Second to be expelled were Banu Nadir. Banu Nadir, who conspired to kill the Prophet, peace be upon him, by sending a boulder from the top. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, was timely intimidated. He was made aware by Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam and the Prophet, peace be upon him, left in safety. But the Banu Nadir, that led to the expulsion of Banu Nadir, and they left with everything that they could take, but the land is still gone. You understand? So much of their property, their date farms and everything, that all they had to leave behind, and that is why they were trying to get it back through some ways. And so the financial aspect of this war was funded by Banu Nadir. Okay? So what did Banu Nadir do? They went and told Banu Ghatafan to give us men, literally to fight. And they were the largest group, about 2,000 to 4,000 Banu Ghatafan. Then they went to Quraysh and they said, you have something to pick out against the Muslims. We are ready to fund this war. Join us. And Quraysh happily agreed. Quraysh not only agreed, they rallied some of the other groups. Such as Banu Asad, Banu Sulaim, Banu Murrah, Banu Kinana, all these neighboring sub-tribes close to 4,000. So roughly 3,000 to 4,000. So you're looking at a massive Confederate army which has joined to attack the Muslims. And we studied the story of one Sahabi who is now freed and 70 years old. His name is Salman al-Farsi. Salman the Persian. And the story of Salman Persian, we studied that he went into the pursuit of true religion, from being a fire worshipper, then to a Christian, and then Christian to the true Christianity, eventually when Christianity changed its meaning, and then finally he ended up as a slave in Medina. Eventually, this is the time he is finally free, and he comes up with a brilliant idea that let's dig a trench. Now tell me a little bit about the trench. How big, how long, how wide?
2 kilometers long.
2 kilometers long.
15 or 13 feet deep.
13 feet deep.
And 13 feet wide.
And 13 feet wide. That's a massive trench, right? And so tell me, which side of Medina is it covering? Remind me of the Medina demography.
The north side. The north.
The northern side. They are covering the northern side. Why? Because the east and the west are covered by the volcanic remains, right? So the volcanic remains on the east and the west. It's easy to remember, east and west, volcano, and so the rock is very difficult to walk for an army of 10,000. And the southern side is all date palms.
Are they actually mountains on the east and west, or are they?
The remains are like the rough terrain. It's not mountain, but it's similar
Just
to
rock.
rocky terrain with some high altitude structures, right? So that is the trench was dug to cover primarily the north area. Now, the important thing is, why did the Muslim army not go and like in Uhud or like in Badr, take a different position and try to meet the army somewhere else? Why?
Because of their tricks. That's
was the Salman Farsi's strategy.
Yeah, so he came up with a strategy, but the prime reason is that for an army of 10,000, no matter where you face them, it's very hard to protect the Muslims from all sides. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, like he always did, consulted his companions, and he asked him, what do they think? And they all said that if we stay in Medina and fight them, no army has ever won while we are staying in Medina, just because of the perfect geography of the land of Medina. And so the only land is north, and they try to cover it through a massive effort in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, participated as well, and they dig this trench for about 2 kilometers. This happened, and this took about 6 to 8 weeks. True or false? 6 to 8 weeks? False. What is true?
15 days.
15 days to 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks to 15 days, that's the only time they had, because the armies are already on their way. Okay, good. We studied the miraculous story of the meal that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had at one companion's house. The companion's name is Jabir ibn Abdullah, and it is yet again one more example where the Prophet, peace be upon him, blessed something physical in this world which lasted and which had the quality that gave the entire Muslim army enough food for them to feel content. Dates is one of them, but this time it's literally meal, right? Bread and meat. That was good. That Jabir Rashideen thought that it is good for only 2 or 3 people. So he invited the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he said, whoever 2 or 3 that you would like to invite. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, ended up inviting the Muslim army, who were all hungry, because the battle of trench is being fought in winters. And there was lack of food shortage. When everyone is already attending to the trench, there's food shortage from the beginning, and so the entire army was hungry. Okay, we left it somewhere around the point that the leader of Banu Nadir, who is financing this war, sneaks in to Medina and goes to the only tribe currently residing in Medina. Which is that? Which is the only tribe residing in Medina now? The Jewish tribe. Banu Qurayza. Qurayza and Qainuqa may sound confusing, but think of them as on the opposite side of the spectrum. Qainuqa is way too big, and Qurayza is a small. So the smallest tribe is right now sitting inside Medina. And if you remember the picture of the Medina, Qainuqa is on the southern side, towards the date palms. Okay, it's on the southern side. Okay, so the leader of Banu Nadir sneaks into Medina. Pay attention. Sneaks into Medina, and he tries to convince the leader of Banu Qurayza. His name is Ka'b ibn Asad. And he says that I am with you, the Quraysh are with you. This is too big to fail. This simply cannot fail. We are all one army. It's a massive 10,000 army. There's no way you're going to be in trouble, so come with me. And it is said that Ka'b ibn Asad, right from the beginning, was not convinced on this. He did not really want to break this covenant that he had with the city of Medina, meaning with the Muslims. And he said, it seems like, he gave an example, it seems like you are a cloud, dark cloud, which from distance appears that it is full of water and promising good. But when it comes, it just gives thunders and lightning. That means it doesn't have anything. And I still don't have a very good feeling. And he continues on, but eventually, long story short, Ka'b eventually gave up, and he says that, okay, I'm with you. And the Muslims get some idea about this Banu Qurayza potentially changing sides, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, sends few of his companions, and Banu Qurayza starts coming up with long answers. When somebody gives a very long answer, that means they are not being to the point, and vague answers, that means the clear indication is Banu Qurayza has indeed flipped. This is where we left last time. Okay, so now if you imagine the scene of the Battle of Trench, it isn't active conflict, or it isn't a physical hand-to-hand war for the most part. Why is it not happening? Why is it? Because of the trench. The trench is like a speed bump, so it is stopping them from being in physical conflict with each other. However, it is not perfect. That means, what can cross a trench? What can cross a trench? If not a man, what can cross a trench in a battle? Horse will be, it will be 13 feet will be way too much for a horse even to jump. But what about arrows? Right? What about arrows? So the battle, imagine this battle to be a constant, it's a battle that is appearing like a siege, with the army standing on the opposite sides of each of the trenches, and they are trying to defend, the Muslims are trying to defend the trench so that it does not get breached in any way, because if 10,000 army shows up in Medina, then the Muslims are cornered. But so they are trying to defend the trench, and at the same time they are trying to defend themselves of the incoming arrows. Okay, and this continues for about 30 days while the weather is cold, while the food is short. Okay, so this is the broader scenery of the battle. However, few people do end up sneaking in and challenging and entering into actual conflicts. The book says that Khalid ibn Walid, the famous Khalid ibn Walid, who is not yet a Muslim, he is on the side of the Quraysh, and he's a famous warrior, has never lost, has never been defeated, and is a key architect of the win in Uhud. He sneaks in, he enters into some conflict, but without any casualties, he is forced to return back. Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, sneaks in, enters into some conflict, or rather physical contact or physical war, and without any casualty returns back. However, one incident is noted, and that is the incident of a Qurayshi. His name was Amr ibn Wudud, and Amr ibn Wudud was a known fighter. He was a very strong fighter of the Quraysh, and so he ends up, and finally he ends up challenging the Muslims, saying, who is ready to fight with me, who is ready to lose his life. And in many such instances in the Seerah, when such challenges or such duets have happened, Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala An always is on the forefront. And Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala An is how old? Is he 40s, 50s, 60s? 20s. He's young, right? He's young blood, right? And so young blood, and he stands up and he says, I'm ready to fight you. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, asks him to sit down. And he said, this is Amr. Okay? And he challenges him for the second time. And he's...
Excuse me, what did he say?
What?
Hazrat Ali?
20s.
No, but what did he say to a prophet?
Well, no. Amr ibn Wudud stands up and he challenges. So the Hazrat Ali stands up and is ready for the challenge. But the Prophet asked him to sit down because this is Amr ibn Wudud. He's not the right fit for you to fight. There's no match. So he does this not once, but twice, but 3 times. And even the third time, Ali Raziyallahu Anhu stands up and he wants to fight. And this time, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, this is Amr ibn Wudud, what are you thinking? And he has a red turban on. Whenever in a battle, the red turban is on, that means the person has already accepted that it does not matter what's going to happen. It's life or death. And it's a fiery call for war. So this time Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala finally responds to the Prophet that even if it is Amr ibn Wudud, he responds finally. the Prophet was saying, right, that it is Amr ibn Wudud, Amr ibn Wudud. So the Ali Razulullah Anhu says that even if it is Amr ibn Wudud, I'm ready to fight. And so the Prophet this time, peace be upon him, allows him, and both march towards each other on their horses so aggressively that the entire land around there was full of the sand that comes out from the walking from the rushing horses. So much so that the Muslims couldn't even see as to what's happening. It's just that two horses running towards each other, raising a massive amount of sand, and the Muslims were not able to see until they heard Allahu Akbar. And that is when the Ali Razulullah ends up killing Amr ibn Wudud, the major fighter of the Quraysh. So that is one victory that is noted. Now, one other incident that's mentioned is the arrows and the defense of the trench became so intense that on one instance the Muslims ended up missing the Salah of Asr. So it was so fierce that in defense they just did not get time to pray Asr, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, at that time cursed Quraysh for making a situation that they missed Asr. And indeed, amongst all the prayers, the middle prayer, keeping the middle prayer is extremely important. All prayers are important, but you should never miss the Asr Salah. Okay, so the Asr Salah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was not happy about it at all. And so one other incident that's noted is, with all the arrows that were coming, one arrow hit Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Who is Sa'd ibn Mu'adh? Sa'd ibn Mu'adh is the chieftain of the tribe of Aus. How many tribes were there originally? They were the Jewish tribes, the three of them we have already studied. But then in the non-Jewish, they were the Aus and the Khazraj. So for Sa'd ibn Mu'adh is the chieftain of the major tribe of Aus, and he's a very liked figure. He's one of the early converts, and because of Sa'd's conversion, the entire Aus tribe converted, and so many other Muslims converted. He is a highly revered figure. He stood up in the defense of the Prophet, peace be upon him, every single point, and he is somebody who is very respected. Unfortunately, he comes in the line of an arrow which has severely caused him injury. Okay, he's not dead yet, but Sa'd ibn Mu'adh is severely injured in this battle. Now, all of this is happening. I'm just giving you the scenery while the cold nights are getting even worse. Okay, amongst all the negative things with the reduced food and the injury of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala almost gives the Muslims as a blessing, it's a gift in disguise, and that is a very unusual, unpredictable conversion of a gentleman named Nuaym. Okay, Nuaym, remember I told you Banu Ghatafan, they were not Muslims. They had nothing to do with Islam. They had nothing to do with Quraysh, anybody, right? So really, they were fighting just for money. They wanted some money from Banu Nadir, and they in fact sent a proposal to the Muslims saying, "Can you counter that offer?" Right? So Nuaym, of all the people of Banu Ghatafan, sneaks into Medina side, lands in the camp and the tent of the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself, and he says, "Ya Rasulullah, I have accepted Islam and you as a messenger. Tell me, what service can I do for you?" Okay, so the Prophet, peace be upon him, first of all acknowledges his Islam, and he says, by one person you cannot be as effective on this side, but you can be super effective on the other side. So go and come to me with the news. Come to me with the news of what's happening on the other side, which will be very beneficial and instrumental for the Muslims. So Nuaym comes up with a unique plan, and that is the highlight of how this battle was won. Okay, Nuaym comes up with a very innovative plan. Now stay with me, because if you miss the logic of Nuaym, you will miss it. So Nuaym says, is it okay to lie? Now clearly Islam prohibits deception, treachery, lies. There's no doubt about it. But in a war, you could present the facts in a way that is beneficial for you, because the war itself is a deception. War itself is treachery. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave him permission in the context of war to say something or present something which is not entirely true. And so Nuaym comes up with a very unique plan. So what he does, first things first, he goes and sneaks back into Banu Qurayza. And he says, Banu Qurayza, what a calamity you have drawn upon yourself. Okay, so he's now instilling doubt in the group. So he says, you guys I thought you guys were intelligent. You guys have brought in a huge calamity upon yourself. Guess what? After all of this is done, the Quraysh and everybody they are all going to go away, leaving you all alone with the Muslims. Who's going to come and protect you? Okay, and they themselves are not sure at this stage, and now look what you have done. So Ka'b ibn Asad, who's already on the fence, who was not happy with this at all, he says, Nuaym, tell me some advice, what should I do? Because clearly we have made a wrong mistake. And so he says, the only thing I can think of is, why don't you go and ask Quraysh that give me 70 of your best people, and you keep these 70 people so that they don't run away, leaving you high and dry in this battle. Okay, so what is he advising? He's advising Banu Qurayza of asking 70 hostages to be hosted in the fort of Banu Qurayza, so that they are held ransom and they don't run away, leaving Banu Qurayza high and dry. So that is the first doubt he did. Then he rushes to Quraysh, and then he says, I don't think Banu Qurayza really sided with you. In fact, they are ready to come and execute your men. And if they ask for any hostages or if they ask for any men, then know that I am speaking the truth. So they are in fact building up a plan to come and attack you, and they may, if they ask you of any of your men, then know that I'm speaking the truth, and you guys are in trouble. So now there's doubt in the Quraysh tribe as well, and soon enough Qurayza sends out a notice saying we need 70 men to be hosted in our fort, right? So that's the second seed of doubt. And with Banu Ghatafan, he said neither Quraysh nor Qurayza are sure, and so I think we have just sided on a wrong side. It's a wrong battle. It's not a battle to pick, and so on. So now Banu Ghatafan, which is the largest tribe, they are in doubt as well. So now all three tribes are in doubt, and this has caused disunity amongst them. So at this time, Abu Sufyan is very angry, and he says he appoints Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, to go and ask Qurayza to launch an attack from within. If that is really true, ask them to launch an attack from within. So Ikrimah goes to Qurayza, and this happened to be a Friday evening. So he goes to Qurayza and he says, tomorrow morning I want you to attack the Muslims. And so Ka'b ibn Asad says, it's not possible. If at all, we will do it on a Sunday, because Saturday we don't. It's Sabt, Yawm al-Sabt. So Ikrimah comes and reports the exact same thing. And this concept of Jewish law that they don't work on a Saturday, especially not a war, not a killing, was totally foreign to the Quraysh. So they said, what kind of logic is this? You are in the middle of a battle, and this is clearly an excuse back to Nuaym's point. They are trying to excuse themselves from this war. So he does not understand this, and then who do they call? They call none other than the leader of Banu Nadir, who's financing all of this war. His name is again Huay, and he says, Huay, explain this to me. What kind of a law is this? So Huay is also Jewish from Banu Nadir, so he explains it, but they are not convinced. So Abu Sufyan is almost ready to attack Huay. Okay, so he was so angry that Huay rushes to Banu Qurayza and starts convincing them, forget your laws of Sabt, let's launch an attack on the Muslims from within on a Saturday. And do you think Ka'b ibn Asad is going to do that? He's not. As it is, he's not convinced. B, he is his request for hostages were denied, and now they're asking him to give up their law. So he simply says no to it. Now Huay is so afraid of this no that he ends up staying in the fort of the Banu Qurayza. He does not go back because he knows if he goes back, he's in trouble. Imagine the situation of what Nuaym has caused. He has caused disunity, he has caused doubt, so much so that the chief of the financier, right, of this war is afraid of his life and now hiding with the Qurayza in his fort. So very powerful conversion story of Nuaym and the blessings that he brought. Now, all of this is happening as we speak, and by the way, I spoke about Huay ibn Akhtab, and later on I did mention that one of the daughters of Huay will end up being the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him. That's Safiya, and this is the same Huay ibn Akhtab. Okay, so just remember that the story is coming further. Okay, now it's a stormy night. Okay, the scene is such that again the Muslims are very tired and they are hungry because food is short, and the weather has turned extremely cold, and it is stormy, and very, very difficult situation. At this point, the Prophet, peace be upon him, stands up and it says, who will stand up and enter into the army of Quraysh and get me the latest information? So he's asking for a volunteer. He says that once, and he says, whoever does that, I will be his companion on the day of judgment. It's a huge blessing. On a given day, anybody would stand up, right? Who doesn't want to be a companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, on the day of judgment? And he says that once, but no answer. He says that twice, nobody answers. Third time, nobody answers. Why are people not responding? Even though they have the best intentions, but I'm trying to stress this, that they are literally worn by this war. 25-30 days of a siege-like war, defending the trench, facing the arrows, and with lack of food, and now it has turned bitter cold. Okay, so that's the scene of the trenches. And so finally the Prophet, peace be upon him, picks up a companion by name, and his name is Hudayfa ibn Yaman, and he was literally picked up and said, oh Hudayfa, go and get me the latest information. So Hudayfa had no option because now he's been nominated, he's been picked, right? So he obeys the commandment and he somehow sneaks in to the Quraysh army. Now there's a funny incident that happened here, so pay attention. As soon as Hudayfa goes in, Hudayfa is an Ansari, so he does not know who Abu Sufyan is, and he does not know all these characters. So he sneaks in literally at the camp of Abu Sufyan, and at one point he has a clear shot to kill Abu Sufyan, but because the Prophet, peace be upon him, only asked him to do what? Get the latest information. He didn't want to risk anything beyond that. Of course, he's very tired as well. So he sneaks into the camp, and lo and behold, Abu Sufyan stands up and he says, I'm about to say something very confidential. So before I say that, make sure you identify the person on your left and to your right, that this is a right person. We are in the right, nobody's sneaking in. This would have been a perfect trap for Hudayfa because nobody recognizes him, right? So Hudayfa thinks on the spot, even though he's very tired, he thinks on the spot, and he grabs the person on the left and he says, what's your name? Who are you? And he grabs the person on the left, what's your name and who are you? And he speaks with so much confidence that they identify themselves, but they don't dare ask him. Okay, so this is thinking on the spot, and Hudayfa ends up playing that trick. And so Abu Sufyan, he says, listen, this war was not our original war. We were invited to fight this at the request. It's been 30 days and it seems that there is no end in sight. Moreover, Banu Qurayza, we are not entirely sure which way they are headed, and if we end up on the other side of the trench, we don't know what to expect. And Banu Ghatafan is also, so technically this is just waiting, and the weather has become so bad, so at this point I am about to leave. And he literally, after that speech, he orders the Quraysh army and the companions, or rather the groups of Quraysh, all to stand up and leave. So they start leaving one by one, and this really caused the war, the technical war, to de-escalate, and everybody then starts returning. So the Muslims are now having the final respite after 30 long days of this painful war. Again, it's a different type of war. It was not a physical, but for the most part, it was de-taxing because of building of the trenches and the toll that it took on the Muslims, and the weather included. So that's technically the end of the Battle of Trenches. However, there's one important episode remaining, which I need to tell you. What is that episode? Is the war really over after the army on the other side of the trench have disappeared? Yes or no? Why? Why is the war not over if the other side of the army, or the army on the other side of the trench have gone? Why? Think.
Because there's
So the enemy from the inside.
The enemy from within is still around. Correct. And that is the enemy of Banu Qurayza. Banu Qurayza. So it is said that the Prophet, peace be upon him, it's like early afternoon, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, has just returned. He's super tired himself, and he's about to hang up his armor and everything, and Jibreel alayhi salam shows up, and he says, "Oh Prophet, have you removed your armor?" And he says, "Yes." So he said, "The angels have not removed. In fact, I have come with a new set of army of angels, and the war is not over until you reach Banu Qurayza." Okay, until you reach Banu Qurayza. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, sends a war cry saying, "Nobody rests, and whoever is ready, start now, and we will not pray Asr until we reach Banu Qurayza." So it's about 1.5 hours, 2 hours, the actual fort of Banu Qurayza. But he makes this commandment that we will not pray Asr until we reach Banu Qurayza. And there's a famous incident of the difference of what we should interpret the Prophet, peace be upon him, verbal command, right? So he said, with the intent that nobody prays Asr until they reach Banu Qurayza. That means it's a sense of urgency. And when the time of Asr did come and they had not reached the forts of Banu Qurayza, the Muslims ran into a question whether we should pray Asr because it's Asr time and Asr's time is finally getting over. We should not miss Asr, or we should listen to the Prophet and we should continue all the way until we reach Banu Qurayza, and we should pray Asr only then, even if the time has passed. And they both later came to the Prophet, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, kept quiet, indicating that both positions are accepted. That means he said, he gave his approval, he smiled and he gave his approval for both. But as for the Banu Qurayza are now in a very difficult position. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked them to surrender, they wouldn't surrender. And so the Muslim army lays a siege, not for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, for 25 days the Muslim army lay a siege outside the fort of Banu Qurayza. And now the food supply from within is also coming to a close, and it's getting difficult for Banu Qurayza. Now remember, Ka'b ibn Asad is the chieftain of Banu Qurayza, but with him is also Huway. Huway was hiding in that same fort, so he is stuck in a wrong position. So Huay is there as well, and clearly Kaab is like, you have really put us in this difficult. Now, question is, why is Kaab so afraid? Why is Kaab so afraid of this situation? Is it because he thinks is it because he's fearing for his own or his tribe's death, or he thinks the Muslim army is going to exile him? Why are they afraid?
Probably don't want to be exiled.
Yeah, they're gonna get kicked out.
Because
They were exiled. Banu Qainuqa were exiled because of a mischief they played, which resulted in one person getting killed. Banu Nadir were expelled because they tried to assassinate. But in their own laws, the Jewish laws, the penalty for treason, which is conspiring against your signed government, is death. So they knew that death is facing them, according to their own laws. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, Kaab ibn Asad says we have only three options. One option is we simply go out and surrender, and in fact we launch an aggressive this thing, right? Second option is we kill we simply go and surrender. Second option is we execute our own families so that there's nobody left behind, and then we go and launch out an aggressive war against them. Or third option is we become Muslim, we accept Islam. So they say all three options not valid. The army simply, the Banu Qurayza simply denies all three options. So at this point, Kaab is left with literally no option. So he says the only thing I can think of, at that time he says that the only thing I could think of is to invite a person named Abu Lubaba. Okay, Abu Lubaba is a Muslim. He's sitting outside in the siege, and he says, invite Abu Lubaba for me to consult. And Abu Lubaba happened to be a good friend of the Banu Qurayza in the prior days. So Abu Lubaba shows up, and he asks Abu Lubaba, what should we do? And he says clearly, you go ahead and surrender. There's no other option for you. And in the scenery of that situation, Abu Lubaba ends up signaling to Kaab like this. That means you will be killed. You go ahead and surrender, but you will be killed. And as soon as he does that, something strikes Abu Lubaba. He says, at that point I felt I'm standing in the fort of Banu Qurayza, and I have given up a secret which I should not have. So it's almost like I've betrayed the Prophet and Allah. In the scenery of it, right? So he comes back and he decides to tie himself in the masjid, and he says, until Allah forgives me, I'm not going to untie myself, and he puts it upon himself. Later Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does accept, and then the news was communicated to him that Allah has forgiven you. He says, no, until the Prophet, peace be upon him, comes and forgives me, I'm not going to untie myself. And later the Prophet, peace be upon him, indeed goes and unties them. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Banu Qurayza is aware that death is their only penalty for this. And the Prophet, so finally the Prophet, peace be upon him, presents with an option to them, saying, would you be happy if one of your own decides your fate? And they say, absolutely, we are okay, we have done a mistake, we are wrong, but if one of our own decides our fate, that's fine. And so Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who had long-term treaty with Banu Qurayza in the prior days, so they select Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Now, what is the situation of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh? Sa'd ibn Mu'adh is literally on his deathbed because of the arrow injury that happened during the war. And Sa'd ibn Mu'adh gives the verdict that the penalty of this treason, according to their own laws, according to the Jewish law, is death of all men. Death of all men. And of course, the property and everything will be the price of war. So, whether or not the entire army was, the entire Banu Qurayza were executed, it is said that it is, but the Banu Qurayza were tried with their own laws, and that was the key point, and that literally completes the story of the Battle of Trench. Again, it resulted in a clear victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, or rather it clearly resulted in the victory of the Muslims with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The trench and the storm that all came together resulted in the avoidance of a major catastrophe with 10,000 men sitting outside. So any questions, any comments, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we have completed out of the BU KKMHT 3 important wars. Okay, 3 important wars. Questions?